including student goals, motivation, and time management. Most students are not interested in just perfecting their English, but wish to acquire and consolidate skills needed in their future professions. Today, these include conventional and online writing, paper and project presentations, face-to-face oral communication, and teleconferences, which bring together business and research partners living in different cities and different countries. Our conference, like all the other Zoom meetings most of us have had in the last 7 months, is a good illustration of the growing role of teleconferences. Students have to become familiar with the culture of a contemporary workplace, and it requires today not only specific professional skills, but also soft skills, such as communication competencies in foreign languages and sensitivity to people from other cultures. They should be prepared to work with people they have not met personally and to share tasks with other team members, some of whom are in remote locations. This implies negotiations of approaches, strategies, and procedures to be used in English, which serves as the lingua franca of business, science, and technology. Public speaking is stressful for many people, even in their mother tongue, especially when complex problems requiring the use of sophisticated lexics and awareness of cultural sensitivities are discussed. It is even more so in a foreign language. Bearing this in mind, we organized an online inter-university event simulating an academic conference in order to add authenticity to the language learning process. Our goal was to create situations and tasks resembling those that take place in real life and provide practice in the language skills needed for effective professional communication. We were also interested in creating a learning environment in which our students could collaborate in all stages of the project, developing their teamwork skills and ability to self-assess. At the same time, we were supporting the development of so-called 21st century skills, in particular critical thinking, communication, and digital and technology literacy, while triggering their emotional intelligence. Telecollaboration has become a major format of intercultural communication in foreign language education. In the language learning context, it is generally understood to be an internet-based intercultural exchange between people of different cultural and national backgrounds, set up in an institutional context with the aim of developing language skills and intercultural communicative competence through structural tasks. Starting with tandem partnerships, in which participants learn each other's language, telecollaboration has moved to joint exploration of each other's culture, group blogging, creation of wiki pages, and digital projects in teacher training programs. The emphasis on communication between native speakers and non-native learners is now beginning to shift to partnerships in which the language being learned, and most often it's English, serves as the lingua franca for participants, speakers of different other languages, since this type of exchange is most likely to occur in people's professional life in the globalized world today. Most often, telecollaboration is viewed as a way to add authenticity to language learning tasks and an opportunity to explore other cultures and also shape communicative and linguistic competencies in student-student interactions. Most of the projects described in literature address communication between partners of everyday or social issues widely discussed in the media and informal oral discourse. But little is known about telecollaboration incorporated into EGAP and ESP courses.
If little is known about telecollaboration in EAP courses, then we felt all the more the importance of our project, even more so now after COVID, we feel we've been in a way pioneers with our project. Now let me describe the project to you. The project involved students from Brno University in Italy and students from the Technical Israel Institute of Technology. The students in Brno were students from the Department of Engineering and Architecture, whilst the students in the Department of Science Education, so the students in Haifa, were master's degree students in the Department of Science Education. We chose to adopt a blended learning approach because we wanted to combine conventional teaching with autonomous and collaborative learning whilst using multimodal teaching aids, and we wanted our experience to integrate the 4 language macro skills. The telecollaboration format we chose was synchronous, and our choice of topic fell on the theme of Trial the Skies. We were looking for a thought-provoking topic which would inspire discussion and stimulate the students' interest, and we felt that this was a topic that would bring together state-of-the-art technologies and yet unsolved social and moral issues. Now, the whole experience began with teachers designing a multimodal introductory stage to consolidate the language and practice both receptive and productive skills, written and oral skills, so an integrated skills experience. The teachers initially developed a unit with let's call it a traditional reading text, which was constructed by using different sources, with standard comprehension questions and vocabulary exercises, with the aim of feeding in the language which the students would need to investigate and discuss the topic. This was followed by a YouTube video-based lesson to practice listening skills and introduce further questions to discuss. Our secondary aim was actually to trigger the students' critical thinking skills. This led to further investigation of the topic and identifying 4 perspectives: state-of-the-art, design and technical issues, visual perception, and moral and ethical legal issues. Now, the project involves several stages. After this introductory stage, an additional course was developed. It was an intensive course with selected students who wished to develop their presentation skills. Each class was divided into 2 sessions. There was a teacher-centered session where the teacher was leading the input of conventions of presentations, functions which the students need, for example, for signaling transition between the different stages of the presentation and so on. And the second session, which was a student-centered cooperative session. In the whole class meeting, the teachers were acting as counselors, coordinators, and guides. Now, the student worked autonomously out of class to find materials and select the ones that would be relevant for their presentation. These materials could be in print, they could be videos, they could be TED Talks, anything they thought would be interesting, and that would be the basis of their presentation. In class, the students were working in pairs with a partner, and it was always the same partner, to devise content, structure the presentation, define any unfamiliar words that they felt that their audience would need to know, prepare visuals that would support the content of the slides, write the slides, fit into the 10-minute time slot which was assigned, but also anticipate any questions which they thought their unknown audience might ask them, rehearse, and self-assess. They were also required to write abstract and short biographical notes to a word limit, and they were instructed on conventions of the genre by their teachers, and they had to exchange these with the partner university. Towards the end of the course, as a class, they had to practice their presentations. This began with a silent rehearsal, so each student rehearsing silently and listening to his or her internal voice, assess their peers, and provide feedback based on checklists. So during the rehearsals in class, 2 students were always acting as assessors using the checklist which had been devised together, and the rest of the students were acting as audience asking questions, spontaneous questions. On the day of the presentation, the teachers acted as chairpersons. So they introduced the members of the audience and introduced each student pair and their presentations. For the students, this was particularly challenging. They had to focus on the camera because they had to maintain as much as possible eye contact with the audience and on their slides. Now, this was challenging because they had just practiced and rehearsed in a face-to-face context. They had to remember their script and they had to deal with emotions which actually they realized were much more powerful than they expected. Each presentation was followed by a session of questions and answers by the partner university. After the whole event, the students were given a questionnaire to provide feedback for the teachers and suggestions for further work that we might want to carry out with future students, but also assess the value of the experience and self-reflect on how this helped them, what they learned, what they felt they had improved in, what they felt still needed work on. Now, although this experience was particularly demanding in terms of engagement, in terms of time, and particularly challenging, we feel that there have been a lot of positive aspects. As teachers, first of all, we feel that we were allowed to be adventurous in the sense that we were able to go beyond conventional teaching. From a point of view of students, it was an exercise in autonomous learning, which is particularly important for university students, but also development of teamwork skills. They had to negotiate the content, the structure of the presentation, but this also included accountability because each student was responsible of their work in relationship with the partner of the presentation, but also the rest of the students, because all the presentations were in some way connected. It also highlighted the dialogic nature of all the activities, including the parts of self-reflection. So there was student-teacher communication, student-student communication, but also student and internal voice communication. Even during the silent rehearsing, when the students were in some way self-assessing and becoming others to themselves. In general, it was also an opportunity to experience a combination of linguistic and communicative skills, but also extra-linguistic skills in what would be spontaneous although rehearsed interaction, adapting to an unknown audience, dealing with unexpected difficulties, unexpected questions, dealing with a time limit, coping with anxiety. For example, the fact of speaking in a foreign language in front of a public which they have never seen before, which led to increased self-confidence, but also overcoming shyness. But overall, they realized how important it is to prepare thoroughly and make them feel more confident before the event itself. Now, although they felt that the positive aspects outweighed the problems, there were some issues.
Well, first of all, we faced the resistance of our colleagues. Some teachers were reluctant to get involved in a project which required adding work to the load of their usual teaching responsibilities. Others were anxious about using technologies which they were not familiar with or had not applied in their previous teaching. Probably today, things would be different because everybody had to learn to use Zoom or some other system. Overloaded with mandatory projects in their majors, students were concerned about burdening themselves with few further obligations. So we really had to find students who were extremely motivated. The recognition of credits for the work carried out was another issue. We were unable to involve many students, as the whole project had to be considered an elective module, and Israeli participants could not be awarded additional points despite the amount of work required. Another point which needs further consideration is how this work should be assessed. In Brno, for example, the PhD course director decided that there should be a number of credits to be recognized, and no kind of test, apart from pass or fail result, based on students' commitment and performance. In addition, English-speaking technical support was needed in the final stages to find an internet platform available at both universities. And in general, we had to rely on our technicians to deal with possible technical failures during the actual implementation stage, such as slow internet connection, breakdowns in audio and video, and so on. Lastly, it was difficult to find a time convenient for both sides due to busy schedules. Of course, it was not as extreme as if one of the parties were in Australia, but even the minimal time difference of 1 hour between our two countries played a role. So was it worth it? Despite these difficulties, we can say that it was a useful experience for the students and also for us, teachers. Probably the most intensive telecollaboration took place among us. We shared work and we learned from each other, both in terms of pedagogical approaches and computer literacy required for computer-assisted language learning. Like in other teams, compatibility of the teachers, their shared ideas about language education and readiness to overcome unanticipated difficulties is a prerequisite for successful telecollaboration in language teaching. The pleasure of seeing the participants' satisfaction and boosted confidence on completion of the task at the end of the project was definitely an added value. Another essential component in such exchanges is a choice of topic. Time constraints and curricular requirements of EJP and ESP courses tend to limit them to fields related to science and technology. Students, and some professors as well, are often technologically deterministic. Although today language is increasingly viewed as a commodity, we should not forget that language education is part of the humanities, even when it serves the world of science and technology. So choosing topics that problematize social impacts of innovative technologies is vitally important. Among such topics could be promises and challenges of robotization, or how to live in a smart city, or how can we shift from take, make, dispose to reduce, reuse, recycle economy. All in all, we agree with Robert O'Dowd, who recognizes that unless integrated into core syllabi, telecollaboration will remain on the periphery of foreign language teaching and only be used by highly motivated teachers and students. Moreover, like any other innovative pedagogical approach, telecollaborative projects require institutional acceptance and support. Our project, as Anila has mentioned, took place before the coronavirus crisis. The necessity to teach online is changing our perspective on teaching. While at the beginning of the lockdown, many language teachers focused on how to transition content to an online environment, today we have to think more about specific features of online pedagogy. While language skills which language skills does online teaching develop best? How can synchronous and asynchronous modes be combined? What are the best modes for students' collaborative work now? Can participation in blogs, joint annotation of texts, sharing ideas and creating wikis and Google Docs be a substitute for face-to-face collaboration? Most likely they cannot. But there is hope that with real-life contacts reduced, students will be more willing to do preparatory work for task-based projects online with their peers in different countries. And this will allow them to hone their newly acquired skills of online learning, and it will encourage them to master the evolving Zoom etiquette in video conferencing. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anila Maria, please, can you hear us from the classroom,
Yes.
from the conference?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
I'm afraid you cannot see us, right?
I can see participants on Zoom.
Yes, there are a few participants in the classroom present physically who are saying hello. Please let's say hello, everyone, again. Hi, we are truly and deeply sorry about joining you a bit later, but we had a chance to listen to the majority of your talk. So thank you so much again. I appreciate it's such a huge project, a joint project, and you've mentioned that it raises quite a few questions, doesn't it? But you've also answered a few. So let me, if you don't mind, let me ask the participants at our session whether they'd like to ask a question. No. Are there questions from our Zoom friends? Anyone? Okay, so then I'd like to ask about the etiquette, the netiquette, the Zoom things. So what are the lessons that you learned? And because you have shared so much with us, so thank you for that. For example, I especially kind of appreciated how you listed the thought-provoking questions, that you need a very powerful, a very, kind of relatively wide and open-ended question to start with for the project. But I was thinking more practically about the issue of actually, just like us here, I'm kind of failing at the whole Zoom, etiquette, because we did not manage to join with a camera. What were the specific kind of lessons that you learned? What are the things, because some of it is unpredictable, isn't it? But was there anything that you thought, okay, this is something we would like to transfer to our future, courses or projects, if that's clear?
Anila? Anila, would you like to answer this one?
Anila, sorry, we cannot hear you. Maybe your mic is off. Anila, I'm sorry, we cannot hear you. Anila, your microphone is not on. Anila, we're so sorry. No? Could you please turn on the mic? Yes. On, but not working. I'm so sorry. Seems to be off.
Okay, so I will just say a couple of words. Now, as we mentioned, our project took place before the pandemic. So our students really had, in our universities, there are no online courses. Mm-hmm. Or rather, there were none. Today, of course, most of the teaching is done online or it is blended. Mm. So our students really didn't have any experience of dealing with the audience in the classroom and at the same time with the audience that was connected by video. Mm-hmm. In addition, we used the Skype. So we couldn't, at that point, we couldn't divide the screen. So the students in Israel could only see the slides of the students in Parma. On the other hand, they had to behave in such a way that if all of a sudden we thought that we would see each other, they would look into the camera and would look natural. And of course, they were very, very shy at the beginning. Now, I think that today things will be much easier because both students and teachers are getting used to seeing each other on screen.
Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I agree fully with Maria. What happened was the fact that everything was new. They actually went online on the day they were delivering their presentation. So the idea of Zoom etiquette is something, let's call it Zoom etiquette, but it's something that we need to work on. But in some way, we've developed, as Maria was saying, we were thrown into COVID and just had to do it. This happened before. Our project was before. But I think they did manage relatively well, despite they hadn't been trained in Zoom etiquette.
Yeah, they did very well, and probably we were as nervous as they were. Yeah. The first experience was really
And that's the beauty of it.
The
Yes.
impact of emotions was a lot stronger than we imagined, both for the students and for us as teachers. And we had I'm talking about Maria and myself, we had the added, if you want, stress that we had to act calmly as if everything was working well, there wasn't a problem. But we were constantly in interacting to see how things were working.
Yeah. Thank you. This is so exciting, a bit frustrating, but exciting at the same time. The beauty of, improvisation. We had a plenary talk about improvised theater, and it feels like improvising most of the time, and we're all learning. So, one kind of positive aspect is that both us as teachers and our students are experiencing and learning from this. So thank you again. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And now, if you're staying with us, we've got a few minutes to prepare for the following talk. Maybe we've got our presenters over there. Yes, we'll see.